In the heart of Tanzania's Serengeti National Park, where the earth pulses with life and the horizon stretches like an endless promise, a man named Jengo Kamau was a legend woven into the very fabric of the wild. At 72, Jengo, whose name, meaning builder in Swahili, carried the weight of a life spent safeguarding the Serengeti's untamed spirit. His face, weathered by decades under the African sun, was a map of resilience, deep lines carved by laughter, worry, and unyielding determination. His eyes, though clouded with age, sparkled with a fire that spoke of a man who'd never surrendered to time. For 50 years, Jengo had been a ranger, a protector of the Serengeti's beating heart, its animals. From his youth, when he first donned the khaki uniform, to his twilight years, when his steps grew slower but no less purposeful, he dedicated himself to shielding elephants, lions, giraffes, zebras, and rhinos from the relentless threat of poachers. Even after retirement, the call of the wild was too strong to resist. Each morning, as the first light kissed the grasslands, Jengo climbed into his battered jeep, its engine wheezing like an old companion, and patrolled the vast reserve he called home. To the people of the Serengeti, Jengo was more than a man. He was a living legend. Young rangers sought his counsel, hanging on his stories of outwitting poachers or calming a charging elephant with nothing but a steady voice. His knowledge was encyclopedic. He knew the migration patterns of wildebeests, the hidden trails of leopards, and the favorite grazing spots of every herd. To the animals, he was a quiet guardian, a human who spoke their language of survival. Elephants greeted him with low rumbles, giraffes paused to watch him pass, and even the surly rhinos seemed to soften in his presence. Jengo's heart beat strongest for the sanctuary, a protected enclave within the park where old, injured, or vulnerable animals could find respite. Here, under the shade of ancient acacias, he tended to the weak with a tenderness that belied his rough exterior. His hands, calloused as baobab bark, were gentle when bandaging a zebra's leg or feeding an orphaned antelope. Despite his failing health, a heart condition that sent sharp warnings through his chest, Jengo refused to falter. "The wild doesn't rest," he'd say, his voice gravelly but warm, a smile crinkling his eyes. "So neither do I." One sweltering July morning in 2025, the Serengeti shimmered under a sun that brooked no mercy. The temperature soared to 113 degrees Fahrenheit, the air thick and heavy, warping the horizon into a mirage. Animals sought refuge beneath sprawling trees, their breaths labored, their movements sluggish. The grasslands, usually alive with motion, lay still, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. But Jengo, undeterred, set out on a mission that burned brighter than the sun above. His destination was a thicket deep in the park, where a black rhino named Kibo, meaning hope, lay recovering from a brutal fight. The day before, Kibo had clashed with a younger rival, leaving a deep, oozing gash along his flank. Jengo had been there when the vet team sedated Kibo, cleaning the wound and administering antibiotics. But the old bull's spirit, fierce and unyielding, haunted Jengo's thoughts. He couldn't rest until he saw Kibo with his own eyes, ensuring the rhino's strength was returning. The jeep rattled along a rutted trail, kicking up clouds of red dust that clung to Jengo's sweat-soaked shirt. The heat pressed against him like a physical force, squeezing the air from his lungs. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as he navigated the uneven terrain. Every jolt sent a pang through his chest, a reminder of the pills he was supposed to carry. He ignored it, his focus singular. Kibo. The landscape blurred past, golden grass, gnarled acacias, the distant silhouette of a lone giraffe. But Jengo's mind was fixed on the rhino, picturing his massive form, his defiant eyes. When he reached the thicket, Jengo parked and stepped out, his boots crunching on the parched earth. The air was thick with the scent of dry grass and distant rain. He scanned the shade, spotting Kibo's bulk beneath a cluster of thorn trees. The rhino lay still, his massive body heaving with slow, labored breaths. The wound was angry, crusted with blood, but Kibo's eyes flickered with the same stubborn fire Jengo admired. Crouching at a safe distance, Jengo studied him, his heart swelling with a mix of relief and worry. "You're a fighter, old friend," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of cicadas. He noted the wound's condition, mentally planning to call for a vet check when he returned to base. But as he stood, a sharp, searing pain exploded in his chest. It was like a vice clamping around his heart, crushing the breath from him. Jengo stumbled, his vision blurring, and collapsed to his knees in the brittle grass. Sweat poured down his face, his skin paling to an ashen gray. He clutched his chest, gasping, but the pain only deepened, a tidal wave drowning his senses. His thoughts fragmented. Kaibo, the sanctuary, the rangers who needed him, but his body betrayed him, pulling him toward darkness. Miles away, two young rangers, Amaranaya and Malik Okoye, were tending to a herd of zebras near a watering hole. Amara, 25, was a firebrand with a knack for tracking, her sharp eyes missing nothing in the wild. Malik, 28, was her steady counterpart, practical and calm, with a quiet strength that anchored their partnership. They'd both trained under Jengo, soaking up his wisdom like dry earth drinks rain. To them, he was more than a mentor. He was family, the father figure who'd shaped their love for the Serengeti. As they checked the zebras for signs of stress, a faint, desperate cry carried on the wind. Amara froze, her heart lurching. "That's Jengo," she said, her voice tight with fear. Malik's eyes met hers, and without a word, they sprinted to their truck. The vehicle roared to life, bouncing wildly over the uneven terrain as they tore across the savannah. Dust billowed behind them, their hearts pounding with dread. Amara gripped the dashboard, whispering, "Hold on, Jengo. Please." When they reached the thicket, they found Jengo crumpled in the grass, his face contorted in pain. Amara dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she checked his pulse. It was erratic, fluttering like a trapped bird. "Jengo, stay with us," she pleaded, her voice cracking with panic. Malik rifled through Jengo's pockets, searching for the heart medication he always carried. His fingers found nothing but lint and a worn photo of Jengo with a rescued lion cub. In his haste, Jengo must have forgotten the pills, a rare, fatal mistake. Malik grabbed the radio, his voice urgent but steady. "Emergency at Sector 5. Jengo's down. Heart attack. Send the medic team now." The call crackled through the reserve, halting all activity. Rangers dropped their tasks, volunteers rushed to help, and the park's emergency vehicle, a rugged ambulance built for the wild, roared toward them. The Serengeti, usually alive with the chatter of birds and the rustle of grass, seemed to hold its breath. Amara and Malik lifted Jengo into the shade of an acacia, fanning him with their hats, whispering words of encouragement. "You're stronger than this, Jengo," Amara said, tears stinging her eyes. "You've faced poachers, storms, everything. Don't give up now." But Jengo's breaths were shallow, his eyes half closed, as if he were already slipping into the vastness of the Serengeti spirit. Malik held his hand, his own fingers shaking, willing Jengo to fight. The ambulance arrived in a cloud of dust, medics spilling out with a stretcher. They loaded Jengo aboard, Amara and Malik climbing in beside him. The vehicle sped toward the reserve's medical station, every second a battle against time. Amara pressed a cloth to Jengo's forehead, her voice soft but fierce. "You taught us to never give up, Jengo. Don't you dare quit on us." Malik called his name, his tone a mix of desperation and hope, as the savannah blurred past the windows. The medical station was a small concrete room, its walls lined with shelves of supplies and the hum of machines. The medics worked frantically, their movements a blur of precision and urgency. They hooked Jengo to a monitor, administered oxygen, and began CPR, their hands pressing rhythmically on his chest. A defibrillator hummed to life, its shocks jolting Jengo's body. The room was a storm of sound, beeping monitors, shouted orders, the thump of compressions. Amara and Malik stood in the corner, clutching each other, their faces pale with hope and fear. Dr. Naya, the lead medic, barked instructions, her brow furrowed with concentration. She'd known Jengo for years, treated his scrapes and fevers, and admired his stubborn refusal to slow down. Now she fought for him with every ounce of her skill. "Come on, Jengo," she muttered under her breath, adjusting the oxygen mask. "You're tougher than this." But after 20 agonizing minutes, the monitors told a grim truth. Jengo's heart, which had beaten for the Serengeti for 72 years, refused to restart. Dr. Nia stepped back, her shoulders slumping, her face etched with defeat. "He's gone," she said softly, her voice heavy with sorrow. The monitors fell silent, their flat lines a stark confirmation. A wave of grief crashed over the room. Amara sank to the floor, sobbing, her hands covering her face. Malik stared at Jengo's body, his jaw tight, tears streaming down his cheeks. The medics bowed their heads, honoring the man who'd been their mentor, their hero. Words spread like wildfire, and rangers from across the park converged on the station. Their faces were etched with disbelief, their voices hushed with shock. The Serengeti had lost its soul, its guiding star. Jengo's family, his sister, his nephews, and a scattering of cousins, was notified, their grief echoing across phone lines. The reserve's director, a stern woman who rarely showed emotion, wept openly, clutching a photo of Jengo laughing with a group of rangers. Jengo had always said he wanted to be laid to rest in the Serengeti, among the animals he loved. The rangers honored his wish, planning a ceremony rooted in the traditions of the Maasai, the indigenous people of the region. The next morning, as the sun rose in a blaze of orange and pink, the community gathered in the sanctuary's central courtyard. The air was thick with the scent of sage and the soft hum of prayers. Jengo's body lay on a simple wooden bier, draped in a woven blanket adorned with red and blue beads, symbols of life and eternity in Maasai culture. His face was serene, as if he'd found peace in the wild he'd devoted his life to. Rangers, volunteers, and Maasai elders stood in a circle, their eyes red with grief. Amara placed a sprig of acacia by his side, her fingers lingering on the blanket. "You built this place, Jengo," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We'll carry on for you." Malik lit a bundle of sage, its smoke curling into the sky, a prayer for Jengo's soul to find the ancestors. The ceremony began with a Maasai chant, the elders' voices rising and falling like the wind across the savannah. They sang of courage, of love for the earth, of a man who'd walked with lions. The rangers shared stories. Jengo outsmarting a poacher with a clever trap. Jengo spending a sleepless night by an injured elephant's side. Jengo teaching a nervous rookie how to face a charging buffalo. Laughter mingled with tears, a tapestry of a life well lived. Then a deep, resonant roar shattered the silence. Heads turned, hearts racing, as a massive male lion emerged from the sanctuary's edge. His mane was thick and dark, his eyes gleaming with an ancient wisdom. The crowd froze, fear mingling with awe. The lion moved with deliberate grace, parting the gathering like a king among subjects. He showed no aggression, only purpose, his massive paws silent on the earth. He approached Jengo's bier, circling it slowly, his breath a low rumble. At the foot of the bier, he stopped, lowering his head as if in reverence. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Malik's eyes widened with recognition, his voice trembling. "It's Simba." Simba, meaning lion in Swahili, was the lion Jengo, and Malik had saved 15 years ago from a poacher's snare. They'd risked their lives to free him, cutting away the cruel wire that bit into his flesh, bandaging his wounds and nursing him back to health in the sanctuary. Simba had returned to the wild, but he'd never forgotten the man who gave him a second chance. The lion's presence was a miracle, a testament to the bond Jengo had forged with the wild. His scarred flank, a map of his survival, glistened in the morning light. Amara, her fear giving way to wonder, stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tears. "He's here for Jengo." Simba let out a low, mournful rumble, his eyes fixed on the man who'd saved him. The crowd stood in silent awe, their grief tempered by the sacredness of the moment. The ceremony continued, Simba's presence a sacred witness. After prayers and songs, the rangers carried Jengo's bier to a grassy knoll he'd loved, shaded by a towering baobab. The tree's gnarled branches stretched like arms embracing the sky, a fitting resting place for a man who'd embraced the wild. Simba followed, his roars echoing like a dirge across the savannah. The procession moved slowly, the weight of loss heavy in every step. They dug a grave, simple and deep, the earth yielding to their shovels as if welcoming Jengo home. They lowered his body into the ground, the blanket vibrant against the dark soil. Amar and Malik placed a smooth stone at the head, engraved with his name in the words, Jengo Kamau, Guardian of the Serengeti, 1953 to 2025. The Maasai elders chanted, their voices rising with the wind, guiding Jengo's spirit to the ancestors. Simba stood by the grave, his head bowed, his roars softening to a heartbroken moan. As the sun climbed higher, the rangers dispersed, leaving Simba alone with the grave. The lion lingered, a sentinel of grief, his massive form silhouetted against the golden grass. He lay beside the stone, his eyes fixed on the earth, as if guarding Jengo's rest. The sky burned red with sunset, painting the Serengeti in hues of fire and blood, a final farewell to a man who'd lived for its beauty. In the days that followed, the Serengeti paused to mourn. Activities halted, the usual hum of patrols and research replaced by a reverent silence. Visitors came from across Tanzania, laying wildflowers by Jengo's grave. Yellow acacia blooms, purple sage, white lilies plucked from the riverbanks. Maasai elders burned incense, their prayers rising with the smoke. Rangers shared stories around campfires, their voices thick with emotion, ensuring Jengo's legacy would live on. Simba returned often, lying beside the grave, his presence a quiet vigil. Rangers reported seeing him at dawn, his mane ruffled by the breeze, or at dusk, his roars carrying across the savannah. For him, Jengo was more than a man. He was the hand that freed him, the voice that soothed him, the heart that gave him life. His loyalty was a beacon, a reminder of the bonds that tie all living things. Amar and Malik took up Jengo's patrols, their resolve hardened by his memory. They drove his old Jeep, its seats still imprinted with his shape, and checked on Kibo, who was healing under the vet's care. At the grave, they spoke to Jengo, their words a mix of grief and determination. "We'll protect this place, Jengo," Amara vowed, her hand resting on the stone. "Every animal, every tree, just like you did." Malik nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "You built this sanctuary. We'll make sure it stands forever." Jengo Kamau's story is more than a tale of one man's love for the wild. It's a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of purpose, and the enduring bonds we forge with the world around us. His life teaches us that true greatness lies not in power or wealth, but in the quiet acts of kindness that ripple through time. He showed us that every creature, no matter how small or scarred, deserves a chance to thrive. His bond with Simba, a lion who remembered his kindness across 15 years, proves that love and loyalty transcend species, time, and even death. Jengo's legacy challenges us to be builders, like him, to create sanctuaries not just for animals, but for hope, for kindness, for the future. He reminds us that age, hardship, or fear should never dim our purpose. To live like Jengo is to walk with courage, to love fiercely, and to leave the world wilder, freer, and more beautiful than we found it. In the Serengeti, where the wind carries his name and the earth holds his heart, Jengo Kamau lives on, a guardian eternal, watched over by a lion who will never forget.